At 80, Eric Clapton finally tells the truth about George Harrison. Eric Clapton was born Eric Patrick Clapton on March 30th, 1945, in Ripley, Surrey, England. Raised under unusual family circumstances, Clapton grew up believing that his grandparents were his parents and that his mother was his sister. This discovery deeply affected him and would later influence his emotional expression through music. From a young age, he displayed an affinity for the guitar, immersing himself in the blues records of artists like Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters, and B.B. King. These formative influences would shape not only his musical style, but also his identity as an artist who bridged American blues traditions with British rock innovation. Clapton first came to prominence in the early 1960s as a member of the Yardbirds, a band that was at the forefront of the British blues explosion. Though the Yardbirds achieved commercial success, Clapton left the group in 1965 because he felt they were straying too far from their blues roots in pursuit of a more pop-oriented sound. His dedication to authenticity, even at the cost of commercial success, became a defining trait of his career. After departing the Yardbirds, Clapton joined John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, where he earned the nickname Slowhand and carved out a reputation as a blues guitarist of extraordinary skill, passion, and technical precision. In 1966, Clapton co-founded the legendary power trio Cream alongside Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker. With Cream, Clapton pushed the boundaries of rock music, blending improvisation, heavy blues, and psychedelic elements into a revolutionary sound. Songs like Sunshine of Your Love and White Room showcased his fiery guitar solos and his growing confidence as both a player and performer. Although Cream lasted only 2 years due to internal tensions and creative differences, their brief run solidified Clapton's status as a global rock star and a pioneer of the guitar hero era. After Cream disbanded, Clapton formed another supergroup, Blind Faith, with Steve Winwood, Ginger Baker, and Rick Gretsch. Though Blind Faith released only one album, it contained enduring classics such as Can't Find My Way Home. The short-lived project revealed Clapton's restless musical spirit, constantly searching for new sounds and deeper expressions. He also collaborated with artists like Delaney and Bonnie and later Derek and the Dominoes, whose 1970 album Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs became one of rock's greatest masterpieces. The title track, inspired by Clapton's unrequited love for Pattie Boyd, the wife of his friend George Harrison, remains one of the most iconic love songs ever written, defined by its searing guitar riffs and raw emotional power. Despite his soaring career, Clapton's life was marked by profound struggles with addiction. During the 1970s, he battled heroin dependency and later alcoholism, battles that nearly destroyed him personally and professionally. Yet through perseverance and the support of friends, Clapton eventually overcame these demons, and his recovery became a source of strength and inspiration for others facing similar challenges. His honesty about these struggles added a layer of vulnerability to his public persona, reminding fans that behind the guitar god was a human being fighting private battles. Clapton's career in the 1980s and beyond was marked by both artistic reinvention and personal tragedy. He experienced an immense loss with the tragic death of his 4-year-old son, Connor, in 1991. Out of that heartbreak came Tears in Heaven, one of his most poignant and universally beloved songs, which touched millions with its gentle melody and heartbreaking lyrics. This song not only served as a memorial to his son, but also connected with countless listeners who had experienced grief and loss, cementing Clapton's legacy as not only a master guitarist, but also a deeply human storyteller through music. Over the decades, Clapton has collaborated with a dazzling array of legendary musicians, including George Harrison, Bob Dylan, J.J. Cale, and B.B. King. His versatility allowed him to move seamlessly between blues, rock, pop, and even reggae, as seen in his timeless cover of Bob Marley's I Shot the Sheriff. This broad range of musical exploration kept his work fresh and relevant across generations. While his grounding in the blues gave everything, he played an authenticity that few could match. Eric Clapton's personal life has always been as deeply interwoven with his music as it has been with the people closest to him. One of the most notable friendships and eventual love stories of his life began in the late 1960s, when he grew close to George Harrison of the Beatles. Their friendship was not just a casual one, it was born out of mutual respect and admiration for each other's artistry. Clapton was invited into Harrison's world, playing guitar on Beatles songs such as While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and the two often spent long hours sharing ideas, experimenting with new sounds, and collaborating in ways that pushed both of their creative boundaries. Yet beneath the camaraderie and artistic bond, Clapton found himself facing a very personal struggle. He had fallen in love with Harrison's wife, Pattie Boyd, the English model and muse who had already inspired Harrison's famous love song, Something. Clapton's feelings for Boyd became the source of both passion and anguish, and his unrequited love for her drove him to write some of his most iconic music, including the heartfelt Layla, a song that laid bare his torment and longing. The situation eventually shifted years later when Harrison and Boyd's marriage unraveled, leading to their divorce in 1977. Freed from the constraints of her marriage to Harrison, Boyd and Clapton finally formalized their long and complicated relationship. On March 27, 1979, in Tucson, Arizona, the couple were married in what seemed to many as the resolution of a years-long love triangle that had fascinated fans and the media alike. For Clapton, who had battled through struggles with addiction and the pain of his longing for Boyd, the marriage was both a personal victory and a new beginning. However, married life was not without its challenges. Clapton and Boyd longed to start a family, but they were met with heartbreaking difficulties. Despite their desire for children, they suffered repeated miscarriages and even turned to medical science for help. In 1984, they attempted in vitro fertilization, which at the time was still a relatively new and emotionally demanding process. Tragically, these efforts also ended in failure, leaving both Clapton and Boyd devastated and straining their marriage with the weight of unfulfilled dreams of parenthood. During this turbulent time, Clapton made choices that would have profound consequences. He entered into an affair with Italian model and actress Lori Del Santo, and from this relationship, a son was born. Connor Clapton came into the world on August 21, 1986, becoming a source of joy in Clapton's otherwise complicated personal life. Yet the birth of Connor also delivered a crushing blow to his marriage. When Boyd learned of Clapton's infidelity and the existence of his child with Del Santo, she was devastated. The betrayal proved too heavy to overcome, and the couple's marriage collapsed under the pressure. By 1989, Boyd and Clapton divorced, bringing an end to a union that had once been celebrated as the culmination of one of rock music's most famous love stories, the tragedy in Clapton's. Life deepened even further with the shocking and untimely death of his young son, Connor. On March 20, 1991, at just 4 years old, Connor fell from an open bedroom window on the 53rd floor of a Manhattan apartment building, a devastating accident that left Clapton grief-stricken beyond words. The loss became a defining moment in his life, shaping his music and his personal outlook forever. Out of this immense pain, Clapton channeled his grief into one of the most poignant songs of his career, Tears in Heaven, a heartfelt ballad that expressed both the sorrow of a grieving father and the hope of reunion in the afterlife. The song would go on to resonate with millions, becoming one of his most enduring works and a universal anthem of loss and healing. Years later, after enduring so much heartbreak, Clapton found love again. In 1998, at the age of 53, he met Melia McInnery, a 22-year-old administrative assistant during a party held in Columbus, Ohio, following one of his performances. Their connection was quiet and understated at first, with the couple dating privately for a year before making their relationship public in 1999. Unlike his earlier high-profile romances that were often fraught with turmoil and scrutiny, this partnership brought Clapton stability and peace. On the 1st of January 2002, they were married in a modest ceremony at St. Mary Magdalene Church in Ripley, the very village where Clapton had been born, tying his new chapter of life to his roots. Together they went on to build the family Clapton had always longed for, raising 3 daughters who brought him joy and grounding after years marked by turmoil, loss, and reinvention. At 80 years old, Eric Clapton has lived a life that few musicians could ever imagine, filled with extraordinary achievements, painful struggles, and legendary friendships. One of the most fascinating and enduring connections in his story is the bond he shared with George Harrison of the Beatles. For decades, fans and biographers have speculated about the nature of their friendship, their rivalry, and the complicated love triangle involving Harrison's wife, Pattie Boyd. Now in his later years, Clapton has finally spoken openly, reflecting on the depth of that relationship and revealing truths that he kept guarded for much of his career. Clapton described Harrison not only as a bandmate in moments when their musical worlds overlapped, but as a kindred spirit. George was more than just a friend, Clapton admitted. He was like a brother to me, but at the same time there was always this unspoken competition between us. Both men were guitarists of extraordinary ability, though with very different styles, Clapton fiery, passionate and blues-driven, and Harrison melodic, subtle, and spiritually influenced. Despite those contrasts, their respect for one another was unmistakable. Clapton recalled late-night jam sessions at Harrison's home where the two would trade licks, laugh at their mistakes, and encourage one another to keep pushing forward. But their friendship was not without tension. The most famous strain came when Clapton fell deeply in love with Pattie Boyd, Harrison's wife. It was an open secret in rock circles, and Clapton never fully denied it. "I couldn't help how I felt," Clapton said. "I loved her with everything I had, and I think George knew it long before anyone else did." What might have destroyed a lesser friendship somehow evolved into one of the strangest and most enduring bonds in music: history. Clapton poured his obsession and longing into his music, penning songs like Layla that became anthems of heartbreak and desire. Meanwhile, Harrison, though hurt, never fully turned away from Clapton. Clapton admitted that he has carried guilt for many years over how the situation unfolded. "George was hurt and I knew it," he confessed. "But the incredible thing about him was that he forgave me. He was the most forgiving man I've ever known." Indeed, Harrison's generosity of spirit became a cornerstone of their relationship. Even after Boyd left Harrison and later married Clapton, the two men continued to perform together, appearing side by side on stage as if nothing had changed. To outsiders, it seemed almost impossible, but to them, music was always the bridge that repaired whatever wounds life inflicted. Clapton revealed that the quiet strength of their friendship became even more evident in later years, especially as Harrison battled illness. "When George was sick, I visited him as often as I could," Clapton recalled softly. "We didn't even have to talk much. Sometimes we'd just sit together, and the silence said more than words ever could." Harrison's death in 2001 was a crushing blow for Clapton, who organized the concert for George the following year as a tribute to his friend's life and legacy. That concert, filled with music, laughter, and reverence, became one of Clapton's proudest achievements. Looking back now, Clapton admits that his relationship with Harrison shaped him more than almost any other. "I've played with so many great musicians in my life," Clapton said. "But George was special. He wasn't trying to outplay you or prove anything. He was just trying to make something beautiful. That taught me a lot about what music is really for." At 80, Clapton speaks about Harrison with a tenderness that reveals how much the friendship still means to him. Gone are the layers of bravado, rivalry, and the complications of love. In their place is a simple truth that Clapton carries with him, that despite everything, the jealousy, the heartbreak, the fame, and the passing years, George Harrison was and always will be one of the greatest friends he ever had. "George had this light about him," Clapton said. "Even when things were dark, he carried peace with him. I miss him every day. And the truth is, I'll never stop missing him." For much of his early life and career, Eric Clapton's brilliance on the guitar was shadowed by the demons of addiction. In the 1970s, he struggled heavily with drugs and alcohol, falling into a lifestyle that nearly consumed his extraordinary gift. Yet in 1982, at a turning point that would reshape not only his career but also his personal life, Clapton made the courageous decision to walk away from alcohol and other recreational drugs. This was not a simple or overnight change, but the beginning of a long, painful, and ultimately victorious battle to reclaim his health, his music, and his peace of mind. His decision to embrace sobriety became one of the defining acts of his life, one that gave him the clarity to continue creating music that touched millions, even after overcoming alcohol and drugs. However, Clapton faced another challenge: nicotine. Known for being a heavy cigarette smoker for decades, the habit lingered long after other vices had been conquered. It wasn't until 1994, more than a decade after he had already freed himself from substance addiction, that Clapton finally stubbed out his last cigarette and left behind one of the final chains to his past. This journey of self-discipline and resilience reveals not only the vulnerability of a man often idolized as a rock icon, but also the determination of someone unwilling to let his talent or his life be destroyed. Clapton's story of quitting drinking, drugs, and eventually cigarettes is more than a tale of recovery. It is a testament to human endurance, the power of choice, and the way survival can pave the road to creative rebirth.